Hi everyone, just thought I would record a few little responses to your discussions on meat, and then also the discussion on the Wendell-Berry and Wurzba readings dealing with how we eat or how we live in community. Most of your discussions were really good. A lot of people had some interesting personal experiences to share, and a lot of you obviously had put some real thought into the issues of whether or not we ought to eat meat and what kind of meat, and then also a lot of you talked about eating together or eating alone and some of the challenges with that. So, not a lot of things that need to be corrected, but just a couple of things I thought I might comment on again that might be helpful for you as you move forward with working on your papers. Um, in regards to the meat, there really wasn't a lot that needed to be clarified. A lot of you seem to agree that it would be preferable to eat meat that came from more humane processes and was from animals with a better quality of life up until they were butchered. But obviously, the challenge there is largely in terms of expense, and also we probably wouldn't be able to maintain the current amount of production, at least without major expansion of sort of natural facilities and pasture land and all of that. But again, as we talked about in the module, Americans, most health experts agree, eat far too much meat, so decreasing our overall meat consumption wouldn't be a problem. But how do we encourage more production like that? Obviously, one step is to buy it when you can afford it, which will, in a small way, encourage the production of more. We could also, though, advocate for changes through our political system, right? So that we could argue for and encourage our politicians to provide better subsidies for farmers who are producing meat in better ways. We could look for and advocate for regulations that would eliminate some of the bad aspects of the industrial models. So there are political things you can do. For example, in California, people were able to put through legislation that eliminated battery cages in a lot of egg production in California. So that is possible way of making changes, even if you can't afford it, is to advocate for political changes. And once the bad options aren't available, people will figure out more affordable ways to produce eggs and meat in other ways. When we talked about the Wurzba and Konkin readings, or not Wurzba and Konkin, Wurzba and Berry on the discussion boards, again, a lot of you had some really interesting discussions to share. There was kind of one theme that emerged in all of the groups that I just wanted to mention briefly, was that a lot of people said, well, I don't really see this as a moral issue, right? That it's not a right or wrong kind of issue. And so one thing to say in response to that is, again, from a Catholic perspective, from a natural law perspective, morality is not just about a list of rules of things that we ought not to do or a list of things we ought to do, right? The whole goal of it is to lead a better, more flourishing life. So if eating more carefully, more consciously of what we eat, and if eating with other people and building relationships is good for us as people, is going to give us a higher quality of life, then it is in fact a moral issue. So that's one thing to just kind of clarify there. It's not a moral issue in the same way as thou shalt not steal exactly, but it can be moral in terms of we will lead a better life if we were to eat the way that Wurzba talks about, or if we live the way that Berry talks about. Another thing that came up, I think, in every group, probably in multiple posts, is the idea that it's not immoral to eat alone or to eat a fast food meal in your car because your schedule is crazy. And again, I would not disagree with that, right? I think there are times where you do have to eat and you don't have time for a big sit-down meal or a time to gather friends and coworkers together, right? We can only be morally responsible for what we can reasonably be expected to know and to do. But what we can do is kind of look at our lifestyle as a whole, right? And find ways to change our lifestyles that will allow more meaningful relationships with others, will allow more meaningful eating, more meaningful meals, right? And that, again, can be a moral issue, right? Not in the sense that occasionally eating alone at your desk or eating fast food is a sin or is even immoral in that individual case. But if we find our lives arranged in such a way that we're constantly living this way, that's not going to be good for us in the long term. And so we ought to find ways to change our lifestyle to allow us to eat with other people or eat better meals in better ways that will help us flourish in other areas of our life as well. So those are just a few things I wanted to comment on that came up in a lot of the discussions. And again, a lot of you brought up a lot of good issues. So let me know if you have any questions or comments, and I look forward to seeing the next module's discussion.